Just for demo. Okay. Yeah. Just for like two places that I haven't seen here on campus before. So it's really? Yeah. Are you talking to Mocha or the school? No, the school. Okay. Yeah. And do you teach here or? I do. So mainly, I'm usually the associate director, but right now we're interim directors. Okay. Right. Sorry. I was like, I was trying to get confused. Oh yeah. Yeah. No, I'm here, and I teach from time to time. So I'm teaching a class this semester. Okay. How many students are here? But yeah. Yeah. I was in this room. What were you just like, you know? We did a talk in, I think this is the French school. Oh, okay, yeah. Sam upstairs. Yeah, you're doing, yeah. Oh, cool. That's awesome. Yeah, they're up on the third floor. And I think that's when like back to like Black Peter wasn't open yet? No. Or maybe it was like just finishing. Yeah. Yeah. It's really exciting stuff that happens. I think we should get started so that we have people, All right. Are you ready? Probably better.
Wing it a little bit.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I think we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Jill Dupre, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to Atlas this evening. For those of you who are new to Atlas, we're an interdisciplinary institute that's part of the College of Engineering, but we serve students from the entire campus. Atlas programs feature artists, entrepreneurs, and leaders, along with scholars and faculty from a multitude of disciplines, and bring them together to explore how technology is changing the world. We also look at the impact of information and communication technology on society and explore the ways in which technology can enable creativity. The Speaker Series program brings in distinguished and talented visitors to share ideas or projects that are pushing the envelope, expanding the world, and challenging our way of thinking. Tonight's speaker is part of a collaboration that brings together Atlas's Center for Media, Arts, and Performance with the Boulder Museum of Contemporary Art. And we're so grateful for partnerships like this, which strengthen the Atlas and university communities, but also harness the combined energy of wonderful creative communities. If you're interested in learning more about Atlas, there will be a handout on that counter table, and I encourage you to pick it up on the way out. And with that, I'd like to thank again our co-host for the evening, B. Mocha, and please join me in welcoming Shannon Crothers, B. Mocha's Director of Education, who will introduce this evening's speaker.
Good evening, everyone. This is Miwa, and we are so happy to have her with us tonight. Yes, that's wonderful. So, this is a part of a festival that we're doing now for the second year called Media Live. It's a new media festival. It's live audiovisual art, and I want to recognize our curators in the audience. Janet Fetter is over there, and David Fidel, also over there, and I want to thank Michael Theodore for partnering with us to bring Miwa in for this talk. Thank you, Michael. I really appreciate it. There is a clipboard going around. If you would please sign in, that'd be wonderful for us to know kind of attendance that we have tonight. So, Miwa is an internationally recognized animator, designer, and multimedia artist based in Los Angeles. She has performed her work in TED Global, Sundance Film Festival, Anime Monday Animation Festival in Brazil. I don't think I said that right. The Time-Based Arts Festival, Red Cat. And I saw her first at Isaiah, which is the International Symposium on Electronic Arts last year in Albuquerque. And I was absolutely blown away. So she'll be performing at Media Live tomorrow night. I really hope that all of you can make it. There are still passes to be purchased, still room, and she's really not to be missed. So this will just be probably the tip of the iceberg, but you really need to come and see her perform tomorrow night. So we're happy to have you. Thank you so much.
Okay, yeah. Thanks. Great. Should I move this over? It's fine?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Okay. A little microphone kind of thing. Okay, hi. Thanks for coming tonight. Yeah, I guess I have like about maybe 55 minutes to kind of talk about my work. I think I'm going to kind of go through the background of how I ended up doing projected animation with performance, doing live multimedia performances. So kind of going through my background and sort of like, how I kind of came to it from animation. And also maybe talk about my process a little bit. So it'll be a lot of kind of showing images and showing video. And actually, if at any point there's like a question or something, feel free to kind of raise your hand or yell it out, because that actually helps me to talk through things and kind of gives me directions of what to talk about. So maybe we should have it, I don't know if we should have it a little bit darker since I'm doing so much projection. Actually, we didn't talk about this, I forgot to mention it. Okay, so I came to doing animation first from doing collage. In undergrad, I went to undergrad at East Santa Barbara, and I was just general fine art. I was doing like illustration and photography and painting, couldn't really choose anything. And then collage became a way that I can combine these things together and kind of like cut and paste and just, like combine a bunch of things together, plus found images to kind of start creating a whole different kind of art with it. So then I got really into that, and then once I started making collages in the computer instead, it provided an easy and accessible way for me to start moving it and adding music that I was recording on my own, and just start and also compositing video that I was shooting, and just starting to build an animation. So I feel like my animations actually are very collage-like and come from like they're actually built like a collage basically. And I feel like my performances actually are basically a collage, because it's a collage of imagery with the shadow of my body. I'm not sure if some of the people who are here saw like the video that was maybe like shared through classes or anything. But okay, I'll show you a little bit of it anyway. Okay, so yeah, so when I started Cal Arts as a grad student, I was in the Exponent Animation program. And I thought I was just going to make a bunch of short films and learn some skills and leave. But through being there at Cal Arts, and it's sort of just one building that houses film and video and theater and music and dance and writing, and so it was sort of like a breeding ground for people to kind of cross paths and like find collaborators and everything. And actually, I was also I was in the Exponent Animation program, but also part of the integrated media program, which wasn't its own department, but it was sort of a program where if you were an animator who was interested in performance, or if you were a musician who was interested in audience participation, or if you were a theater directing person who was interested in programming, it was sort of the program that we can kind of join to find people, like-minded people, and also get a different kind of critique from what you were getting in your own department. For example, in the animation department, often critiques are like, oh, that walk cycle looks really good, or it wasn't really like an art kind of directed kind of critique, I felt, which is great, but it was nice to have that balance of both, a critique that was about the skills of animation, but also taking it outside of that and thinking about, how to show it, like how do you create a different kind of viewer experience with animation that was sort of outside of like the normal idea of film. But anyway, so Maybe I'll kind of show the first year animation that I made. I'm just going to talk over it. And maybe I'll just show a little bit of it. But so from when I was making collages and making short animated films, as you can see, that it's very collage-like and compositing body parts and still images. But I had always put myself into my work, often as disembodied body parts that are kind of built out to become something else, like mechanical parts, or these are kind of supposed to be like satellites in my mind. But so it makes sense that later on, or I realized later, that when I started doing the performance, that it was kind of natural that I started putting myself into it physically, because I had always put myself into my work as a composited video. And a lot of the inspiration for my work actually almost comes from a gestural place of just kind of finding a kind of gesture and then thinking about what that gesture could represent and then building a visual world around it. Like, I think there's a part where I'm kind of stroking the earth and sort of trying to heal the earth. So stuff like that. But yeah, this is from my first year when I was just learning and figuring out After Effects. And using some Flash. I don't know if there's people in here who are animators. Okay, maybe not. Okay, maybe I'll just cut that short. Okay.
You said that was your first year. What year was that?
At Keller's, 2004. Yeah. So that was my first year short. Just
Is that your music also?
No, it was from a band called Goldfrapp. So you can kind of see how my animation came from a collage place. And then in my first year, I met Chi Wang Yang in the integrated media program that I was talking about. And he was a theater directing student who was interested in finding ways to combine media on stage. And so actually, I only collaborated with him because I thought I was required for the class, to pass the class. So I was kind of like really disgruntled, like, oh, I have to work with this guy. I guess maybe, might as well. It might be better than anyone else in the class. But, of course, working with him opened up so many doors, and I got so excited about working with performers, with installation kind of based media projection stuff, and working with space. That is basically what I've done since then. So, kind of goes to show that kind of doing something that maybe you're not really comfortable with or really kind of trust yet could lead to something pretty, that changes your whole direction. But let's see. So I'll show a little bit of video of this. But so this is the first piece that we made in our first year, in both of our first year as MFA1s in the integrated media program. And Chi Wang and I, for this piece, we were using a Brecht play called Ocean Flight. That's about Lindbergh's flight across the Atlantic. But then it's really abstracted from the text. So we had the text, and a lot of it was talking about Lindbergh feeling as if his body was turning into a machine because he was inside of this airplane, and he was, I think he didn't even have like a window to look out of while he's flying. It was all sort of like navigation through tools and a very small little window to the side or something. He couldn't really see where he was going. So it was very, he was very like symbiotic with the machine and the airplane, and really wanted to kind of explore that through the media, or through using projection and media like video and pre-made animation. So this piece, we have a live performer here, and then off to the side, I also showed a diagram, but off to the side we have a live camera over here that I'm controlling. And that live feed video is going through here to Chi Wang using Isadora, which is a kind of video processing, live, real-time video processing kind of software to treat the video and project it here and scale it down, and he can move it with his mouse around the space. And we have front and rear projection on this screen that has some pre-made media playing through Isadora with the live cam media, sometimes overlapping, sometimes in layers. So I'll show, where is it? So this is the diagram of it. You know, there's the live cam and it feeds back that way. What's so funny? Okay, anyway. Okay, so from the very beginning, we were very much interested in just discovering things through play. We were just projecting images and like playing with the live camera. It was very much about just playing with the medium and discovering things as we went along, and then like kind of noting like, oh, that's a really interesting effect when you combine the body with the projected media kind of mapped onto the body, or onto the screen or whatever. So it was very much about just exploring and sort of inventing and discovering as we went along. I guess I don't think I have process shots of this piece, but and we were also very interested in always kind of changing the relationship of the media to the body and to space. There is the screen, but between the front and rear projection, it kind of changes where the projection is, and the live performer walks in front of the screen, and the projection becomes part of a body, and like the audience is kind of constantly having to reassess where the media is and what that relationship is, which I think kind of keeps it more, the viewer is more actively watching instead of it becoming passive, where they just get used to, a certain kind of setup, and then they kind of like lose sight of the combination, the juxtaposition of media and body. So I'm gonna, this is just the edited video, but I'm gonna show it. Okay, maybe I'll talk over this a little bit or stop it at some points. Okay, I'm going to stop it here for a second, but I just wanted to point out that between the live camera and the performer, and then Isadora and this sort of video puppeteer kind of person, in terms of how the framing of the live camera and where it's moving in space was all kind of happening between the four of us simultaneously, that we were both kind of adjusting to each other. So it kind of constantly created like this kind of struggle and like, just kind of, it was sort of like four people trying to read each other's minds. And I mean, we knew what kinds of composition we wanted to create per scene. So it was sort of like constantly adjusting to each other, which I think kind of creates like a strange kind of, like a physical, tangible presence of, that it's not just kind of pre-coded and pre-recorded, that there's sort of like, you see the adjustment happening on stage, which is in some kind of engaging for the audience, I think, or maybe annoying, I'm not sure. But let's see. Yeah, and actually, I'm gonna go back a little bit. This was something I remember from the process, like discovering it while we were, playing, like I was saying, where the live camera person, we scale and frame them in a certain way where, just connects through with the other performer. And, we just kind of loved that moment so much that we really wanted to put that into the piece. And I think there's also just the uncanniness of these kinds of illusions, but also being hyper aware that it's a construction is an interesting dichotomy for the audience. That they're kind of both. There's sort of a and this is kind of a thread that happens in all of my collaborative work and in my own work, that there's sort of a suspension of belief and suspension of disbelief at the same time, that there's both sort of cinematic kind of collapsing of space and the illusion, but there's also the theatrical space of, you know, being very hyper aware of the construction and all the layers of parts that are coming together to create this illusion. Okay, so, thanks. Okay, so that was the first piece that I worked on with combining media with body and objects in space, and I was kind of hooked because there were so many things that we were discovering as we were playing, and also things that were kind of not quite inventing, but kind of, you know, like, oh, if we do it this way, we could create this kind of thing. And it was very much about discovering and kind of like solving puzzles and problem solving as we went along. That it was really exciting and, you know, just kind of opened up so much for us. And actually another thing I should point out is that for this piece, because we were using Isadora, we actually had control over, it wasn't quite like programming or coding where it's completely interactive or reactive, but we were able to use the program to, for example, you know, scale and move the media in real time, and also fire off cues per scene, so that you know, there is a performance, there's a breath to the performance, and the performer can take a moment of their own, and it was cued in by the performer instead of it just kind of being locked into a timeline through video, which, you know, which actually I do for my own work, because actually like just kind of everything is choreographed for my own work. But so there's sort of a balance, and there's ways that one kind of gives you something versus takes away something, which I'll kind of touch on later too. But so that was our first year, and then another person, Anna, came into the program the second year for the music school, which is 2 years into the integrated media program. So she joined our group, and then since she's a composer, performer, singer, our work became more kind of operatic. She would sing live with the pieces as the main performer. So we made 2 more pieces in the 2 years after that. So basically, the 3 years I was in CalArts, I made with the group 3 different collaborative performance works. And we were starting to play with putting projection out into space, onto objects, and, you know, where the performer can actually walk around. And also it kind of breaks up, we were interested in breaking up, you know, we were using these screens that are rectangle, and, you know, we can interact with them and move around and stuff, but we're also interested in using projection to create these kinds of more open spaces with projected elements, but it kind of becomes more open to like just the proscenium of the space instead of it being limited to screens. And actually another note about this scene is thinking about theatrical language versus cinematic language. For example, here, the screen is just blank, and then Anna is singing and then walks back. And then when she leans back, this kind of surgery table kind of thing appears, and it, you know, and then so the audience, or hopefully, you know, the idea is that there's an awareness of it being a cinematically a top-down POV, but which, you know, it's kind of also kind of a conflict that, or not a conflict, but, you know, kind of a visual conflict that, you know, she's not, as a live performer, she's not actually lying down on a table. So then there's sort of like a way that the mind has to kind of like adjust to read it that way, that we're suggesting for you to read it that way. And I think those kinds of things are interesting. I think I'm not going to go through the video for it because I'm just going to be kind of jumping through stuff. So I'm just going to kind of go through a series of photos of the other two pieces that we made. Yeah, I feel like all the pieces that we made are kind of journey narratives with a female as a main character and transforming through media to try to reach some sort of goal, and often failing, actually. So actually I'm going to skip to my work from here. So those are the three pieces we made while we were at CalArts. And then after working on these three pieces, I decided that, or I guess during the last piece, I decided that I wanted to, for my thesis at CalArts for the animation program, I wanted to do a performance of my own. And I felt like I was saying, there were so many discoveries we were making that I was interested in like investigating on my own. And then there were also ideas that were coming up while in the collaboration with the group that I couldn't really pursue because just because of like consensus, and also because we were kind of creating more theatrical pieces, and I was interested in making something that's still a live performance, but maybe in a more cinematic place. So I started doing work that was in shadow silhouette for most of the pieces, where it's me as a live shadow. And then with this piece, I was interested in sort of the sleight of hand and sort of illusion and confusion between what's real and what's not. And it's interesting that just a simple, you know, black shapes can become kind of confusing. So, for example, in this piece, I'm a live shadow. That's true that I'm sitting on a live shadow. I mean, clearly these are drawn elements. But I also play with sleight of hand, where I would have a cutout of a pie, you know, as a shadow. Then I would kind of hide it and then switch it into a video pie, so that it becomes really disorienting for the audience, you know, like what's real and what's not, and what's tangible and what's not. I'll show a little bit of video of this one. Where did it go? Okay, I think this is just like, yeah, 2 minutes. Oh, this is before I switched the clock to be the other way around, so this is going backwards. And this was a section where I came around to the front of the screen and set down boxes to the music. It was pre-choreographed, so I knew, you know, per part of the song and per beat which boxes to set down, and then they started growing out from the ground up. And I think the audience really responds to this part, that it's, you know, it's basically projection mapping, but, you know, that it's happening live, that it's not preset, that it's kind of like happening as I set them. I think was a nice effect, and also that it kind of broke, you know, once again, kind of breaking out from the screen and using more layered space for the media. Okay. Actually, I'm gonna. Sorry. I guess maybe it became more apparent when I was doing the shadow performances, especially because with the shadow I can actually augment my body more. For example, this part I think it actually shows a side view, but by being closer to the projector, I can make my head become, I don't know, like 3 times bigger than it actually is. So I could create these kinds of almost like zoomed in kind of scenes. And also because I am so close, you see more of like the physical struggle for me to be right in the projection, in the composition. And you see more of like kind of a physical struggle where if there's a part where, oh, this is kind of, there's a part where I'm holding my hand out and you see the anatomy of my hand right after this. And, like you kind of see me quivering and, there's like sort of a physical struggle to fill this, to be a part of the design and the composition. And I think there is a way that that kind of creates a more visceral connection for the audience that, I could easily have done this as just like a green screen, black silhouette in a projection and, made this just a straight animation, but it wouldn't have been interesting. It's more interesting that it's a physical person, that the audience is really hyper aware there's a physical person, and also hyper aware that, the person has to struggle a little bit to fill this image. So that's,
monitors when you're doing that to see where you are?
No, I could see from the other side, and here, I have a mirror in the other hand. I guess it's really tiny to see that I'm holding a little mirror. So the mirror is like out here, out of the frame, so I can see myself. But besides that, it's just choreography, a few spike marks on the ground, so I know where to kneel, and just rehearsing, and yeah.
When you're doing the projection mapping, are you using multiple projectors?
For this, no, just one. It's just the same one that's doing the front projection for the rest of the piece. Actually, I should mention for my own work, I wasn't using any of that kind of software. So it's just a QuickTime file that I start and then like run back and stop at the end. And I come from an animation background, and animators have control over every frame and every pixel, and I felt like the complexity of the image was really important to me, and I didn't want to lose the control of that. I guess like that kind of software is getting better and better, but back then I took a Max MSP and Jitter class, but I really wasn't that into it, and also because there was so much quality that you lost at that point that you had to use a much smaller video and everything, that I was more interested in just choreographing, like just building animation that was complete and polished and everything, and building everything through choreography rather than using that kind of program software. So I think there is a way that you lose control with it, even though it can also give you control. So I guess it's just a choice of what feels more intuitive and natural to you. Okay, so I made this as my thesis piece, and part of why I wanted to mention that is that, so by the time that I graduated, I had 3 of the collaborative pieces plus my own piece, ranging between 10 and 20 minutes that we could start submitting to festivals, which is really great because, right after graduating, you're able to kind of start kind of getting into festivals. We were at an animation festival in Portland, and then a few months after that we went to a performance festival in Portland called Time-Based Arts Festival. And then I don't know what else we did after that. I think there was something in Texas. And, just kind of slowly building out our kind of professional kind of repertoire of doing these pieces. And also, once you get into festivals, some of these people can kind of help you with residencies or like maybe connect you to support. So it was just like a way that these kinds of things like leapfrog out from there. So it was really important that we had made this work while being in the sort of comfortable incubator of school, where we had access to equipment and everything. Oh yeah, actually I'm going to show a failed experiment from Dreaming Lucid Living. Oops, I was showing my roommate in my living room. Actually, I'm wearing sweatpants and stuff. It's kind of embarrassing, but actually, it's very simple. But just thinking about because media and body is never actually intersected. There's always that awkwardness of it. It's not actually ever on the same plane. And then you try to connect it. There are moments of uncanniness and illusions that you could create through performance or using interactive software, Connect or whatever, or just uncanny timing that happens. But then I think there's also something interesting about the failure, that there's like this awkwardness. Also because the way that I shot the cat, it gets bigger when it lands and as it like approaches, even though it's on the same plane of the screen. So there's like kind of problems like that are really interesting, that are in some ways problematic, but actually that problem makes it even more interesting. So I didn't really do anything with this, but maybe down the line somewhere I will. So, and like I was saying, so much of my work comes from play. So there's a lot of experiments like that where I try it and I show it to maybe a roommate or someone, and like, okay, well, I don't know what to do with it, but maybe I'll just kind of keep it in my back pocket for something down the line. I'm going to go back to the group again and talk about a piece that we made in 2009. So this is actually, we got the commission for this through the Portland Institute of Contemporary Arts, who were the people who put on the Time-Based Arts Festival that we went to after graduating. So like I said, kind of people that you start creating these professional relationship with, kind of leapfrogging out other things, other possibilities. So we got a commission and a residency through PICA and one of their private art patrons to make a performance for the art patron's birthday party. So we had a 3-month residency in Portland and to make a new piece. And so that was in 2008, and then in 2000, so we did the birthday party, and it was like kind of crazy and a little bit kind of messy. But then in 2009, we got another sort of commission through the Red Cat, which is a performing venue in Los Angeles, to take that piece and polish it and make it tour ready. So so we kind of consider it the piece getting done in 2009, but we started in 2008, and we did like the bulk of the work in 2008. But so this is a much larger piece that has 3 front projectors and 3 rear projectors. It has a live band of 4 or 5 people that we travel with. It has a sound designer and a video designer, and the 3 Cloud Eye Control members, plus people that we train on site to be stagehands. So it's kind of a much bigger show, kind of bigger than we could really handle. But and this is another journey narrative of Anna as a scientist going to the Arctic to preserve a seed that is the memory of all humanity, kind of starting from the idea of a seed bank in Norway. That's a real thing that we heard about in the podcast. But, again, kind of a dreamlike, kind of abstract take on that. But yeah, so between the 3 projectors, as I was saying earlier, we're always interested in kind of constantly keeping the stage modular, that we have these 2 screens, sort of the basic screen that you see in all the other Cloud Eye Control stuff from my work, but we have them on wheels with the projector attached to it, so we can constantly move it around and the projection never leaves the screen. And between switching in front and rear projectors, using other props to project on, to kind of constantly change, the scale of what the stage that the audience is seeing and the relationship of the media. For example, here Anna has a 10-minute monologue talking about what she's doing as a scientist. And another thing with the collaboration is that it kind of we ended up kind of taking on scenes for kind of our fortes or our focuses. So here, Anna wrote a a monologue, and it was very much about the text. So the animation became sort of animation came much after she had the text, where it was sort of more illustrative of what she was talking about. It was more like a diagram rather than it being more of an immersive or environmental kind of animation or projection. And the scene after this, it goes right into this scene where this cutout boat on a cart appears. She gets put on like her kind of outdoor sailing costume, and then she gets into this boat, and the projections become these sort of round vignettes that kind of circle around her. That's kind of telling the story of her crossing the ocean. And then it breaks up the projection into these layers of the boat and then the waves. And then the boat video actually follows Anna as she moves on the cart with the wheels, so she can actually kind of cross the stage from one end to the other side. That's supposed to be the end of her journey, even though it's like 15 feet away. So there it is. So, like using the projection, like I said earlier, as more of diagrams versus more of an environmental cinematic space. And also the screens can, because they're modular, they can move away from each other while they have the projections and move in space and stuff, so that there's kind of ideas of like kind of opening and closing and like people crossing through and everything. And we're also...
How are they moving? I mean, how are those?
The screens?
Yeah.
They're 10 feet by 7.5 feet. And so if there's a screen, there's actually like this beam, this arm that comes out, kind of creating a triangle with the projectors just attached to it with wheels on the 3 points. So it's just stagehands moving it. Yeah. Yeah, so they're just kind of out of the frame, controlling it and moving it. Yeah. Yeah, so here we had the two screens really, as wide apart as they could be, with these cutout plexiglass that are sanded, there's some that are rear projected and some that are front projected, plus these cutout foam core icicles that are hung on 2 lines going across the stage. So it kind of creates more of like this video proscenium, and it's, like I said, the scale of the stage kind of keeps changing, that sometimes it's more intimate, and then sometimes or just with one screen, and sometimes it becomes, as wide as 40 feet. So we're really interested in those kinds of, creating expansive spaces versus more intimate spaces. And playing with materials for here we're using the plexiglass, the sanded plexiglass that kind of catches the image in sort of an icy kind of texture. And because it's rear projection, Anna can be behind it to create a shadow, but then because it's plexi, you can actually see through it too. So that's a really nice kind of texture and difference from when we were using just screens. So we were really interested in playing with materials. I think we got like 5 or 6 different kinds of plexi or like colored plexi, and we're playing with it, standing in different ways to see, if it's like cross or just straight, like kind of, yeah, I don't know. Oh yeah, so I'm going to kind of talk about the process of this, but we were really interested in having a muskox character in this piece. I think it kind of is a point of choices that, when you're playing with media and live performance, there's a lot of choices about what you could do. And actually I'm going to skip to there's another picture of it. I'm going to skip to the process photos. But, so when we had the idea about wanting a muskox, like I can make it as an animation, like we could have maybe somehow found a muskox at a zoo or something and shot video of it. We could have had someone in costume. We could have made like a shadow puppet kind of thing. Or we could have had it as just like not even an actual visual presence. We could have had it as like a suggestion or like a soundscape that is supposed to suggest a muskox being present or something. So there are many options of things we could do, but we were really interested in having like a really visceral physical presence of this kind of larger than life animal on stage. So we were interested in, so we started out just making a test out of, I just cut out this thing out of like a postcard that we got at the house we were living in for the residency. And then, we're just playing with like holding in front of the projector to get it larger and smaller. And then I guess this is the second step where we were interested in, I think it was in the photo. We were interested in finding a way to have Anna ride in the muskox like this. So, so we made it larger cutout, and then we were trying to figure out, if Anna's on a chair, like on a different layer, so she's smaller, but the muskox is bigger. Is there a way to kind of figure out a way to mask out the chair legs so we don't see it? But I guess at this point we were trying to figure out if there's a way to hide two people behind the muskox. And then we had this thing built by our technical director there, which is like two backpacks with this kind of stretcher thing that's really heavy, actually. And they were walking around the house with like all the neighbors like looking at us like, what is going on? With like carrying Anna around. And then we went to a llama farm and got a bunch of fur, and then we spent every night just taping all this like loose bits of fur onto gaff tape and stapling it together just to kind of make a DIY kind of little strips of fur. And this is sort of an early version of it, so it looks kind of bad. This is closer to the final version, and this is what it looks like from the back. And so it's 4 pieces of foam core that attaches in kind of quadrants with the opening, and it's not there, but we have a curtain that comes down so that in the beginning when the muskox comes out, there's no hole, and then after she gets into the muskox, she lifts up the curtain so that we can see her through her shadow through the opening of the muskox. The head is separate so that it has its own articulated movement, and I guess he doesn't have it here, but this person normally has, or whoever this person is, we train these 2 people wherever we go on tour, has a piece of cardboard that they can kind of make the muskox blink, So, like I was saying, there were many choices of how to make this muskox happen. And we kind of went in this really complicated route, but we were really interested in having the presence of like the way that the fur moves with each step, and kind of like this slow kind of breath that the muskox has as it's kind of moving across the stage, and how the weight of the muskox changes once Anna's in, like the steps become heavier, and and those kinds of visceral sense we really wanted to have like really present on stage, that it was really important to us, which if it had been animation, I think it wouldn't have had that kind of presence, that it was just kind of passed by in the audience like, so we really wanted that kind of like hard work to be really visible and visceral for the audience. So I think this is actually a little bit of video of us in Chile training the 2 Chilean guys. So she sings, and then they kind of learn like step in a certain kind of rhythm. But yeah, and actually I'll show a little bit of video of this piece too. So this one's done. This is just the edited reel, so I think it's like 2 minutes. Oops. Oh, the video is really. But even that kind of shaking is, like really important to us. Okay. Like once again, it was sort of more like there were chunks of video per scene, and it was a way that we could fire it off so that the performers can take, or the performer or the stagehands, if we're changing scenes, that there is more control over their timing and their kind of breath and their performances, that they're not kind of rushed from one thing to the next, and it feels more natural. And also, since we had the live band, the live band had headphones on with a click track in it, so that they knew that, like, the cues, so that they're going along with the cues of the video at the same time. And also, there were a lot of moments that we where we'd be looping the video and looping the sound, looping the musicians, kind of vamping, waiting for something to get ready, and then hit go, and like the next scene starts and stuff like that. So, yeah, especially within a larger ensemble like this, using software definitely gives us more control than less control. Yeah.
So would you say that software QLab is almost like your script? Like, is it helping the whole thing happen?
I mean, I'm not sure if I'd call it.
Parts?
Yeah, it was more like we built the whole show already, and then it was a way that we could plug in all the video, all the audio, and piece it together, and then have control over when everything starts and stops. And then, like, next to the person who's running the audio and video on QLab is the lighting designer, who's like calling all the cues for the lighting to keep changing. Because I mean, since we're using video, lighting has to be really specific. It'd be like a little tiny shaft of light, like, coming towards Anna's face, because we don't want to hit the projector. And that was a whole separate thing, yeah. So everything is kind of being fired off and is really specific.
So, but like, is all of that written down somewhere? I guess that's what I'm wondering.
I mean, I think there's a cue sheet that someone has, yeah. Like is it like this? Not the stage manager. There's the stage manager who calls out the cues during. Yeah, I'm not from a theater background, so I don't really know. Someone does it. Yeah, I'm actually like behind like the stage in like polar bear costumes and stuff, so I don't really know what happens at like the control area. Let's see. Okay. Okay, so then there's that piece, which is really big and requires a lot of people, and requires for us to ship crates of equipment and props to, like the muskox, to the wherever the venues that we go. So it was great that we did this larger piece that was so much more challenging than what we've been doing, but it was also became kind of hard to show the work, because it meant that whoever the inviting festivals or venues were had to have a certain amount of budget to fly out 9 people at least, hopefully 10, and have staff there and allow for like a 3-day load-in to train people on site, and all the shipping, and also pay for our fees and give us per diems and all the stuff that is important for a theater company to travel. So we haven't been able to show that piece as much as we'd like, but yeah, we did it in Chile, in Santiago, at a theater festival in January, and that could be the last time we do it. Hopefully not, but we'll see. And then, sort of as a reaction to that, my own work is very compact and travel ready. It's just me and 3 suitcases, and I just show up, and I have most of my own equipment. I just plug everything in, and normally I could set up in 2 hours or 3 hours and just be ready to go. Yeah, after the cloud control work, and sort of this is going back to my Dreaming Lucid Living, my thesis show. This is basically the same setup with the front and rear projection. So actually I can kind of perform them pretty interchangeably. But like I said, I felt like I was still making discoveries and, just kind of pushing the boundaries of what I could do with the front, just the simple front and rear projection in my body. So I made this piece is from 2010. And this piece I performed at TED was basically the premiere, the TED Global, which is the TED that happens in Europe, which, it was kind of a surprising opportunity that I was really scared of, but it happened, and it was really good, of course. And then so this piece kind of took off, and I was able to show it a lot pretty internationally. Another good thing with our work is that both cloud control and my work is that because it's a mix of video and performance, that we get to show it at film and animation festivals, at theater and performance festivals. I've shown it at tech conferences, at science museums and galleries, like a women's festival that happened in Slovenia. So it just kind of opens me up to, having more possible venues to show it, and also be a part of different kinds of conversation that, I could talk about it in sort of a more animation context. I could talk about it in a theater and performance context, kind of dance context, So it's nice to be a part of all of those kinds of dialogue. And also have different kinds of audiences that come to it too. Yeah, I think I'm actually close to the end of the time, and so I'm not sure if we should switch to Q&A. I could show some of the kind of process shots from this piece too, if you're interested. Maybe I could show video kind of behind us, and then also kind of talk about the process. I just made everything in After Effects. And like I said, I'm not using software to play. I'm just using QuickTime. Yeah. I tend to make my work as sort of like a bunch of different ideas and vignettes, and then sort of start to piece them together. So my work often have like kind of sections or almost chapters that kind of have hopefully enough of a sort of an emotional arc or a journey through it that it feels like a whole, but often they kind of have different sections. And actually, I didn't really think about it until later after I made the new piece that I'm performing at Media Live, but I was pretty smart in this piece, which I didn't plan to be, that I kind of built in, like besides the narrative of sort of the story and the narrative of sort of the performance, that there's also the narrative of the complexity of the piece kind of unfolding as it goes, that in the beginning it's mostly rear projection, and you kind of, like I said, the audience kind of gets used to understanding the relationship of the media to the body in that way, but then the images become and the illusions become more complex over time, that it becomes really disorientating or confusing for the audience. So yeah, and like I said, I think maybe I have some, I'm not sure if I have sketches from these parts. Uh-huh. The narrative emerges from the work, yeah. I feel like the process of me making the work is also very collage-like, where I just have like all these different parts, and then once I have a bunch of things, I start to be able to see how they fit together. So I think in the end there's sort of a narrative, but it's more abstract and, you know, it's more hopefully enough of an emotional journey that if like emotionally it feels satisfying, but not really a clear story. Not much of a plan. Yeah, like I said, I sketch out ideas on a notebook early on, just to kind of note take. And then once I start building a scene, you know, I start to kind of figure out where things are going per scene. But like I said, you know, like this piece basically has 4 chunks with some transition in between, and it could have fallen any way. But you know, it's just kind of, I kind of intuitively started to see, oh, it has to be this way. But yeah. And with the new piece that I'm doing too, I had like a lot of sections, and like only towards the end was I able to see it as a whole and start figuring out how to make everything make sense as it falls into place. And the animation and the performance happens at the same time as I'm making the piece. I have the screen and the projector set up in my living room off and on a lot towards the end of the process. So basically my living room is my studio, so you know, I'd be animating and then I could turn around and test it out immediately. And so you know, it starts from just like building mock-ups, even just pulling images from Google and then start, you know, putting an image up and like figuring out ways that I can interact with it. And then, you know, building out those ideas. And I can always refine it and polish it and make it more complicated through Photoshop and After Effects and the animation. But, you know, just having somewhere to start physically is really important to find the inspiration. Let's see. Yeah. You know, this is another field, actually that's a friend in like a bear hat. But the inspiration for that bear that came to my back just came from somewhere completely different. I think this is from before I had the island on my back idea. So I had sort of a sequence where that I was thinking of, where I was interacting with the bear and like playing with different objects like pendulums, and sort of creating a sleight of hand of like him holding an animation thing but then handing it to me and I have a real thing, or maybe sometimes an animation thing, so it becomes really confusing. Oh, and this is sort of that top-down POV thing in the beginning of this piece, where everything is happening on tabletop, and it's like various household, just things that I grabbed around the household, like food and books, and kind of like creating magical moments with my shadow and timing. And, you know, I'm just lying underneath the projector beam is how I'm creating that. And like I said, you know, it just starts with like, even just, you know, it started with a sketch with a drawing in a sketchbook, but I just found like a Google image of a keyboard, and you know, like, oh, is it interesting if I'm pretending to play a keyboard? And also, is it more interesting if I had my body in my frame as like a top-down POV from here as opposed to just my hands? And just testing out different ideas, and I'm just kind of constantly photographing or videotaping myself, so I could kind of like look at that and then like start assessing like, oh, you know, if I did it like this, and I could start building out this kind of stuff. So like I said, it's kind of almost like a laboratory process of just testing out. It's like just trying out ideas and, you know, seeing what works and what doesn't work and why something fails. Is it interesting that it fails, or is it more interesting when something succeeds? A lot of failed ideas that don't go anywhere. Oh, and then, you know, in terms of building the animation, I would often just take a photo. I'd take a photo of myself behind the screen and just start using that as a template that has I guess in this image it doesn't, but has a reference point for how big the screen is in context to my shadow. So then I have like a framing for the composition of if my shadow is here, then I can start building out, you know, still images, and then later animations, knowing like what the composition, the full composition is, and what the scaling of everything is. Oops. Yeah, we're kind of over time, so I don't know if there's like open it. Okay, for Q&A.
I do have one question. This might not matter so much when you're just doing your solo work, but for example, when you are commissioned for something, or I don't know if you have to submit a budget or how that works, but I mean, with so much being experimental,
Yeah.
you were talking about like, oh, we might try different kinds of plexiglass. Like, how do you come up with, if you've ever been, like, if you do have to do stuff like that, would you come up with numbers? How do you do that if so much is experimental?
Yeah, I mean, between commissions and getting grants and submitting, you know, a budget proposal for grants and stuff like that, I mean, I guess with my own work, I kind of have a know what I want. I mean, I guess basically you submit a dream budget and hopefully they agree to it, so it includes everything. Yeah, and I think also adding a lot of contingency, and often, especially with the group work, we have to kind of like go back and you know, like take a little bit from here to put it more towards this and stuff like that. But I think normally, you know, we know that we want to play with material, so we would build it into the budget that, you know, either just put in materials and we'll figure out later what it is for, yeah. Uh-huh.
Since I noticed it seems that there is this recurring use of blue and red in your work, is there a particular reason for that?
Oh, I didn't notice that. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I started out making, like I was saying, with collages, and and with Dreaming Lucid Living too. It was very black and white, and color became, you know, color could be kind of challenging to work with, just like because it's a huge spectrum that you could be working with as opposed to black and white. So it kind of came later in my work, but yeah, I don't know. That's interesting that you noticed that, but I didn't know. Yeah. Actually, I should put this little document up. I'm not sure how much I could go through it, but it's not really a clean outline because I haven't figured out how to make it cleaner, and because there's so many overlapping points in it. And yeah, for anyone who has classes, please feel free to go, and also to stop me for questions. But it was just kind of notating the things that we were thinking about or things that are important to us in the process of making the work, to kind of keep reminding ourselves, and also to just kind of as a reminder to us, and for the group and for my own work, about thinking about how to break up the video, to create a different kind of relationship, to make the familiar unfamiliar, because we're, you know, really used to seeing video and film in this kind of situation, a dark room with the audience sitting like this, looking up towards the big screen. But I think, you know, I showed some examples of how we were interested in breaking up the video in space and layers and scale. Also thinking about an intimate way to see the work versus large-scale and immersive and environmental ways of seeing the work. For example, let's see. I actually never finished this project, but where is it? Okay. So this is basically video mapping, except for the fact that, and I know there's software for it now, but I just did it through Photoshop, and just like finding each corner of these little box buildings that I made, and mapping the surfaces, and then later building an animation around it. So I think there's like 30 or 35 of these little, I think they're like 2 inches by 5 inches or 6 inches max, and you know, some are like an inch by an inch of these boxes. And I was really interested in, so this is maybe like 2 feet by 2 feet of area for all these little boxes. And I was really interested in telling a story that was, you know, a cinematic story in a 3-dimensional kind of space like this, that the audience has to come really close to see it, and also that the story is unfolding, you know, kind of 360 all around these buildings, that the audience, the viewer has to like not only be intimately kind of like, you know, looking into this miniature set, but also like follow the story, the animation, by walking around the table. So I didn't quite finish this, but I'm, also interested in intimate kind of 1 or 2 viewer at a time kind of relationship with the media as well. But that was a really complicated project, so I kind of let it go for a while, but hopefully I go back to it. I think a lot of these things I kind of showed images or kind of talked about in the process of going through the slides. But like I said, the idea of the media and body like actually never fully being, it's never actually together, that it's either an illusion or a suggestion that you take the audience along with you through the transformation. So I feel like there's often, and I think there's something about that, oh, sorry.
I was just curious if you've ever seen any of the experimental stuff that's gained record field.
I have a little bit, yeah.
And I think you would have
Like
loved
through
it.
school, or yeah. Oh, thanks.
I really do think you've got to gone beyond. I mean, it's incredible.
Oh, thank you. The thought that I was going through. Oh, that by creating, like I was saying, I think it talks about parallel narratives down here, but thinking about the cinematic versus theatrical, 2D versus 3D, body and media, suspension of belief and suspension of disbelief at the same time kind of creates a active kind of mode for the viewing, for the audience, that, they're just kind of not passively watching something, but they kind of have to kind of almost use like both sides of their brain kind of to like see the illusion, but also be aware of the construction, and almost kind of like choosing to believe in the illusion with you. And so many of the things in my work, there's a lot of things where, like I said, it's not a complete illusion, but somehow the audience's eyes complete the illusions for me. So I'm really interested in those kinds of the relationship with the audience. And also, I think also, especially maybe in my piece, what I was talking about with the struggle that, someone brought up mirror neurons, but, just sort of visceral physical connection between the audience and the viewer, that through my body, especially because I'm a shadow, I become more sort of an avatar, or, become more of a symbol of a person as opposed to a specific me, a person, that it becomes kind of an easier entry point for the audience to kind of come into the world with me. Yeah, so I'm already over time. Oh,
I just have, even in your early animation work, when you weren't performing live, your body was such a big part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a different level of attachment in your group work where you're not such a part of the performance in real time? Do you feel differently about those types of performances?
Yeah, I mean, I think the main performer, which is normally Anna, one of the collaborators, kind of really, just her presence kind of starts to define the pieces. And I feel like, I think my work is also whimsical, but like the group work often becomes whimsical in a different way. And like I said, often my own work becomes a reaction to working with the group, that there's ideas I couldn't pursue in the group. Not because, just it wasn't the place for it, that I kind of bring into my own work. And for me, when I'm performing the pieces, it almost becomes like a ritualistic, intimate space, especially because I'm hidden away from the audience. So I have kind of my little cocoon space where, and as I keep doing the performances, it's choreographed, and it's there's a little bit of improvisation, or like a little bit of things that I could like be aware of, like smiling, or like a little bit of like a wave of a gesture that I can add. But it's very it's already set, so it becomes like a ritualistic, like kind of tai chi kind of thing, where and I think because it's so personal to me, like I said, the process starts from the very beginning, where I'm like physically. I don't know. Like, I think I would be heartbroken if someone else is performing one of my pieces, which maybe has to happen sometime in the future. I don't know, but not anytime soon. Maybe I'll just show a little bit of the new piece that I'm be performing, just as a little teaser, and I'll cut it off, and then maybe, unless there's more questions, maybe we can be done. Oh, sorry. I'll make it bigger. maybe I'll talk over it a little bit, but I mean, I haven't really looked into sort of the mirror neuron kind of idea of, you know, the audience kind of physically connecting to my gestures as kind of almost their own, because, you know, they recognize a body and, you know, and you kind of like connect it kind of into their body. But it's always interesting to me that, you know, I make it a point to smile in my pieces. And it's such a small real estate, visual real estate. You know, sometimes the smiles are augmented if it's scaled up, but often, you know, even if I'm not, it's just basically one-to-one shadow that the audience is like really cued in to my face, and even though it's a shadow and it's a reduced version of a face, that, you know, they could see my my eyes fluttering and smiling and everything, that it like really kind of comes through to them, because we're just kind of, you know, trained as humans to like be really cued into that kind of thing. So I think that's really interesting, and, you know, it's definitely a part of my work. And also, I mean, I feel like a lot of things I don't realize until I'm kind of close to the process of making work, that with this piece I realize I'm kind of approaching it in a more cinematic way. There's more jump cuts and stuff, and playing with more sort of idea of the camera, POV of the camera, or sometimes switching to a POV of myself as the sort of the character in this fantastical world. Like, you know, when I look up, you see a scene of just the clouds and the sun that I'm looking up or something. So it's interesting that in my previous work, it was kind of more performance-based, in that my body was constantly in the projection, and sort of the world was sort of like transitioning around me, whereas with this, there's more kind of like jump cuts and stuff like that. So, yep. Okay, so that's just a little bit of a teaser. There's a lot